Welcome to Grow Your Wealth, the podcast where scaling a successful brand and your wellness go hand in hand. I'm Rena Goodwin, founder and CEO of FACTEUR PR, a top beauty, health, and wellness PR studio, and I'm here to help you work smarter, not harder. Each week, we'll talk branding, marketing, and business growth alongside real, practical insights from trailblazers who are building businesses without the burnout. If you're ready to grow your brand, protect your energy, and design a life you love, you are in the right place. Let's grow. Hello, and welcome back to Grow Your Wealth. Today, I want to talk about a growth strategy that almost nobody talks about online these days, even though it might be one of the most powerful ways to protect your business and protect your energy at the same time. You know, a big thing that we love to talk about here on the podcast. Most entrepreneurs think growth comes from adding more, like adding more marketing or more services, platforms, team members, content, offers, bells and whistles. You've been there before, right? But when I look back at some of the biggest growth moments in my business at FACTEUR PR, and honestly, even in my life too, they didn't come from necessarily adding something new. They came from removing something that wasn't exactly working the way that I had anticipated. It came from removing complex issues, from distractions, and removing things that drained, quite honestly, my time, my energy, and ultimately my money, which we don't like. I call this strategic subtraction. Strategic subtraction is the discipline of moving things that create noise so you can amplify the things that actually drive growth in your life and in your business. And I actually want to start with a personal example that doesn't really have a lot to do with my business because, health and wellness shows up in life just as much as it does in business. And obviously, it's impossible to disconnect the two from each other. So to give you a little bit of context, for years, I have approached wellness the way that a lot of high achievers do. If something felt off, my instinct was to do something about it, to add something. If my jeans were getting maybe a little bit tighter, maybe I would switch up my workout programs. If I was feeling under the weather, I might slip in another supplement or try some other new health routine. It always just feels like the solution is just to add. I'm not doing enough. Another discipline, I got to optimize some more. And recently it just kind of dawned on me, like, I only have so much of me to give. Like, how many more sort of things am I going to add into my wellness routine? And while I'm a big fan of optimization, at some point you will come to this realization that something has to be removed in order for me to keep adding or improving. And for me, something that I did that had a bigger impact when it comes to my health and wellness, and I think it's had an impact on my business too, was subtracting something from my lifestyle. And that was alcohol for me last year. It's been about 250 days since I've had a sip of alcohol. And what has surprised me has been how powerful this one subtraction has turned out to be in my life. Because when I removed alcohol, I'm not just removing the drinking itself, I'm quite honestly removing everything that comes with it. So in the short term, I'm sleeping better. My head is clearer the next morning. I'm not dealing with that sluggish feeling. I'm not spending money on something that ultimately doesn't make me feel better. These are some of the short-term benefits. And then in the long term, I feel like I'm depositing wellness tickets into my health, right? Like the ROI in the long term, I feel like is just going to be better. So instead of constantly stacking new wellness habits on top of something that's already draining me, like with alcohol, I just decided, like, why not just remove the drain itself? I mean, there were like vitamins and supplements that I had been taking that, like, okay, maybe these will help me feel more energetic, for example. And it's not that I drank alcohol enough, but it was enough for me to take notice that I didn't feel the best that I could, that I was looking for other solutions to this problem. So removing all of the, kind of supplements, removing, any kind of like habits that would maybe lessen the effects of alcohol, so to speak. I just decided to quit cold turkey. And honestly, it's been such a power move for me because things have gotten a lot easier for me. I'm not like on this uphill battle with my health and wellness and the way that I feel. I wake up with a lot more clarity. My mood is also very even. If you have ever, even just like for me, like having one or two drinks the next day, I'm anxious. What do they call that? Like anxiety. I would feel that to my core. I'd be like super nibbly the next day. I think I've even like lost a little bit of weight since I'm not making, ill decisions on my eating habits and so forth. My energy is also more consistent. I make better decisions, all of the things. This experience with this one thing in my personal life has really made me start thinking about how this same principle of like, rather than just adding more to like cover up the fact that something's not working, just remove the constraint. And sometimes we try to stack new strategies on top of something that's already draining our time, energy, or profitability because it just seems like the easiest thing to do, or we're doing it to avoid discomfort somewhere else down the line. When the smarter move in the short term and down the line might actually be subtraction. Which brings me to a second area where subtraction can be super, super powerful in your business specifically. So many businesses, mine for the longest time, operated this way as well too, believe that growth means expanding my offers. I got to offer more services. I need a variety of packages. Maybe we should start serving this industry. What about these kinds of customers? But the reality has been that more offers, particularly for a service-based business like mine, often creates more complexity. It means I've got more systems to manage, more marketing messages to communicate around that specific offer, and more operational overhead. So you can see how this also gets expensive very quickly. That complexity eats away at profit too if you're not careful. And one of the most important strategic decisions that I've made with FACTEUR PR was actually narrowing the industries that we serve. I've talked about this on a past episode of Grow Your Wealth. And listen, guys, I admit I dragged my feet on this as well too. But I'm here to say it has made a monumental change in my business. For a period of time, we worked across multiple lifestyle categories, including home businesses like interior designers. We were working with cleaning products, candles, like anything that really like revolved around the home, pet food brands, which again, I do not regret any of it. It's been awesome. I've made some incredible media relationships. We got fantastic results. All of the things, like certainly no regrets. Our clients were wonderful. But what ended up happening over time is like I started to know that our strongest results, that our deepest expertise, and that the work that really energized our team consistently happened specifically in a smaller segment of health, wellness, beauty, and aesthetics. Because when we were pitching these types of reporters for our clients, it meant doing something extra for the other types of clients. And this might make sense if the math is mathing. And in my case, it wasn't. So we made the decision to ultimately subtract the home category from our focus. And this was scary at first because on paper, it sounds like we're removing a revenue stream, but something really interesting starts to happen when you narrow your focus. Because yes, we did lose revenue. And anytime I get approached by someone who still thinks that we serve these industries, I have to turn them away. But what have we gained as a result of subtracting these industries? We've gained a lot clearer messaging. We've gained better authority. Our authority has become stronger because we are the PR agency that specializes in beauty, health, and wellness. My team has also become a lot more aligned around a very particular type of client that we serve and exactly the problem that we solve for them. So the market also better understands exactly what you do. Okay. So instead of becoming one of many options or pretty good at something, you become a specialist and become known as being great at something. And research and history have actually supported this philosophy as well. Back in the 90s, Steve Jobs, when he returned to Apple, was famously known for cutting dozens of products. I think they had like 150 products at Apple. And when he returned, one of the first things that he did was actually eliminate like 101 of them or something like that. It was like a ton of products to just a handful of core products. Did they lose a lot of revenue? Yes. But what ultimately happened, the brand catapulted because that simplification really became one of the foundations of Apple's growth, right? And this was, I don't know, 30, 40, I don't know, 30-ish years ago. And Apple is now one of the biggest brands in the world, right? According to McKinsey, too, companies that simplify their product or offering portfolios and ultimately remove those underperforming offerings can improve their operating margins by as much as 30% simply because they've eliminated that operational complexity. And complexity is expensive. Think about how much time and money it cost Apple to produce, market, and sell all of the other products that were not as profitable, right? It costs them money, time, energy, focus, team. Sometimes businesses grow faster when they subtract the things that dilute their attention. So this also connects to something that I talk often about with our clients, which is leverage. One of the reasons why I believe and see so strongly in PR as a growth strategy is really because it creates that exact kind of leverage. So when you earn something like media coverage, for example, it doesn't just give you like this fleeting moment of visibility, right? It's not like an ad where you turn it off and poof, it disappears. That one feature is something that you can leverage forever. I always say once featured in the New York Times, always featured in the New York Times, right? That one feature starts working for your business in multiple ways. Someone discovering your brand for the first time, they might see that authority lift on your website. It gives you meaningful content to also share with your audience on social media, on your blog, in your sales deck, investor relations. It makes potential clients trust you faster because they've already seen you validated somewhere and respected. And often it leads to opportunities like speaking engagements or partnerships or collaborations that might not have happened otherwise. So, in other words, one moment of third-party validation continues to work for your business as long as you leverage it long after that article or interview is published. That is leverage. That is what you want in your business. Leverage is what allows a business to grow without constantly increasing your overhead or your workload. Hi, friends. I want to tell you about our new and improved authority accelerator from FACTEUR PR called RealFluence. RealFluence is the only membership that helps beauty and wellness founders grow their reputation and authority to attract new customers without endless discounting, advertising, or going viral. Inside, you'll learn how to get recognized for your product or your expertise, partner with other founders, and become the name people trust and talk about, all with the guidance and community to support you every step of the way. Remember, you can't buy authority. You have to earn it. And RealFluence is here to help. Visit therealfluence.com to get started. Which brings me to a third area where subtraction can create major growth if you approach it correctly. Subtracting the wrong people at your organization. This is probably one of the hardest decisions founders have to make if and when the time ever comes. And I know for me, it never gets easier. I hate it because these types of business decisions involve real people and real relationships. And you want to believe in people. You want to give them time to grow. You want to support them 100%. I get that. But as a CEO, you also have a responsibility to the health of the business, right? And there have been moments in my own business where I have realized that a team member was not making a positive impact on the company. And what I mean by that is very simple. If the business is paying for someone, there needs to be a return on that investment. I don't think it has to be immediately, but sometimes that return is revenue. Sometimes that return is operational efficiency. Sometimes it's leadership. Sometimes it's culture, certainly client results. But when the math doesn't work and you're putting in more than you're getting out, keeping someone in a role can ultimately drain that company. And the difficult part is that removing someone from the team often creates more work in the short term, yes, because suddenly someone's got to step in and fill those gaps. You're also maybe reworking a process, for example, eliminating a process in many cases. You're figuring out what actually needs to happen next to avoid mistakes that maybe have occurred under this person's supervision prior. But what I found is that these moments often force us to actually build better systems and gives you that opportunity to maybe automate or eliminate things that used to be manual or that used to honestly be kind of irrelevant, right? It helps us clarify these responsibilities and also helps us create processes that make delegation next time around even better. So over time, the business becomes actually stronger and more efficient. So what looked like subtraction initially ultimately becomes optimization. Not only is this effective or can be effective subtraction as a growth strategy when it comes to your team, but also to your customers and clients as well. So maybe it's eliminating customers that no longer fall in an industry that you serve. That could be one example. Maybe you've had to raise your prices and customers that no longer are falling within that investment range are a good fit for you. Or maybe it's just customers that eat up your time because they're not the right fit. Maybe they're a little bit difficult, things like that are just not worth it to keep on because of, again, the energy and the operational stamina that is needed to sustain that client ultimately makes them not as profitable for your business. So sometimes companies can grow when they subtract these low margin clients. We've all had them, right? The ones that require disproportionate time and resources without contributing much to the health of the business, okay? Harvard Business Review has actually found that in many cases, companies with a relatively small percentage of their customers are the ones that actually generate the majority of their profits, while others actually reduce profitability because of the service demands that they require. So run an audit and see where your money leaks could be with the current customer or client base that you have. It might actually be better for you in the long run to remove these clients or customers from your roster. I know it's hard to do, but I also look at it as a service. Like if you just got those clients that like you both are going to know, right? You've probably talked about it where you're like, okay, this isn't working, or it's working, but it's really hard. It's hard for you and it's for them. We might need to have a moment where we come together and chat a little bit more about this. The last time that I subtracted a client for this very same reason, they were so grateful for it. They were gracious. Like I've got some pretty important terms in our agreements that say like, hey, if you decide not to work with us, there's a fee involved. If I come to you or if it's mutual, right, there's not going to be a fee. We want to obviously part ways amicably. And I never want to keep a client that isn't a good fit, right? And I think that's honestly paying your client a lot of respect to come to them and have these conversations and possibly ultimately make that decision too. Sometimes too, subtraction can mean stepping back from too many marketing platforms. Oh my goodness. As entrepreneurs, especially, we love addition. I'm not going to say that we don't. Like every time something new comes out, I'm like, what's this? Like shiny object syndrome. I have fallen to that many, many times. There's a lot of pressure right now to be everywhere at once. But let's be real. Most businesses don't grow, at least not for a while, right? Because they're everywhere. They grow because they show up consistently in the few places that actually matter to their audience. So see where the majority of your new business actually comes from, okay? Not what you think it comes from, not where you think it should come from. Double down on those before adding in new channels. In other cases, subtraction might also look like removing unnecessary meetings that fill up your calendar without moving the business forward. Every meeting should have a clear outcome, okay? If you're stepping into a meeting where you don't know what is the meeting for and what are you supposed to accomplish during that meeting, why is this meeting on your calendar? Pause there. Many times you can just label it and that's great. You can keep moving. Sometimes you might need to remove it. Studies from Harvard Business School have shown that executives now spend more than 20 hours per week in meetings. Oh my God, I have been so guilty of this, which means simplifying how teams communicate can actually unlock an enormous amount of time. What would you do with 10 of those hours back? And if you can't remove these meetings, you can batch them together so that you don't lose energy between these meetings with context switching. This could also mean simplifying your software stack as a subtraction strategy. Many businesses, especially those that are very like digital, mine included, we accumulate tools over time until our systems become expensive. They become complicated. I'm using this for that. Gartner's even reported that companies often use less than half of the functionality in the software that they pay for, which means that sometimes simplifying technology can remove friction and reduce costs. Now, this can be a slippery slope because technology can also help buy back your time. But what this study shows us is that if you're not using the technology that you currently have to its full capacity and just always adding more, now we're getting back into that habit where we're adding costs and we're adding complexity and our business stalls, right? So take a look and audit the tech and the platforms that you are currently using and see how they are ultimately helping your business. Are you optimizing with them or are you just kind of removing a step in the process? Maybe you got to look at the process and fix that from start to finish as well too. Some businesses as well grow when they remove discounting. They focus on getting in more revenue and don't focus on profitability. You've heard the saying before, right? Revenue is sanity. I'm sorry. You've heard the saying before. Revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity. When you are discounting, get real. You are taking less profit in, okay? And I'm not saying that discounting doesn't have a time and place, but consider your profit, okay? If the math isn't mathing, as we've talked about before, if you're not going to make enough money to sustain this kind of business, don't extend the discount, okay? Focus instead on strengthening your positioning and your perceived value. We talk a lot about this here on the podcast, talk a lot about it with my clients as well too. Sometimes they say, how do I see the ROI of PR? And I was just chatting with a nutritionist earlier this week and she wants to raise her prices. But in order to help her justify this massive price increase, she needs to increase the perceived value of the outcomes that she provides. And one of the ways, again, to be able to do that is by third-party validation, right? If she can get media to say how great she is and feature her, her value is perceived to be a lot higher and she's perceived to be a lot more approachable and a lot more successful and all of these things. Now she can raise her prices, right? So focus on strengthening your positioning and perceived value so you don't have to discount. So you can subtract discounting from your offers. Again, you may get less customers, at least in the short term, but sometimes even less revenue means more profit, okay? And last but not least, sometimes subtraction just simply means letting go of the kind of work that keeps you quote unquote busy, but doesn't actually move your business forward. When you start to look at your business through this lens, I promise you something interesting is going to happen. you begin to see that growth isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about removing what doesn't matter anymore so that you can double down on what does. So before we close today, I want to leave you with 3 questions that you can ask yourself this week. So think of this as like a subtraction audit, okay? Question number 1, what is one activity in my business or life that consumes time, money, or energy, but does not meaningfully contribute to growth? The second question I want you to ask yourself is, if I were starting this very business today, what would I choose not to build? And the third question is, what could I remove that would allow me to double down on what actually works? Subtraction is not about doing less for the sake of doing less. It's about removing what doesn't matter so you can amplify what does. Addition creates activity. Subtraction creates clarity. And clarity is what scales. You don't need more things to do. You need more leverage. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with another founder or entrepreneur who might need this reminder. And sometimes the smartest growth strategy is subtraction. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time on Grow Your Wealth. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode deposited some useful advice and insights to help you grow your wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. You can find more resources, episode details, and updates at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram. Follow me at Grow Your Wealth Podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or takeaway from today's show. Until next time, remember, burnout is optional. Take care, and I'll see you next week.